guys, so today I'm here to do a tag video, which I haven't done in ages. I just have not done a tag video in my recent memory, which probably doesn't extend that far back. But one of my absolute favourite people in the whole wide world, Lauren Wade Reeds, made up her own tag for the festive season, which is the Christmas Carol book tag. And since it's December, since Christmas is approaching, I thought I would do the tag. I think the questions are a lot of fun, and there's something so nice about tag videos because they just force you to sort of talk about really random, disparate books more often than not, so that's what I'm here to do. Loving the lighting right now. Honestly, I regularly miss the lighting. This is natural lighting in my mum's living room, so it's nice to be back here. And without further ado, let's jump into the questions. Question number one, and all of these questions are based on elements of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, is a book that was a childhood favourite. This one is so difficult because I was an avid reader as a child. I don't know if it's because I was an only child. I don't know if it's because my dad was a huge reader. I don't know if it's because I was regularly dumped in the library whilst my parents went to the supermarket. But I loved reading, and I read a lot of books as a kid, and I used to reread a lot of books as well. So I'm going to go for one that I reread many times from the library, which is absolutely wonderful. And that is The Secret of Platform 13 by Eva Ibbotson. And I wanted to mention this because obviously Harry Potter was so formative to my reading. It had such a big impact on my life. I started reading the books when I was 6 years old. However, The Secret of Platform 13 came out before Harry Potter, and there are clear parallels between that book and the first Harry Potter book, and I'm pretty sure J.K. Rowling herself has admitted to having been inspired by that book. So I think it kind of encompasses a general sense of my reading as a child, which was of course fantasy. And if you haven't read it but are a Harry Potter fan, I would highly encourage you to, even if you're an adult these days. Most of the time. This one is all about a young boy who is raised in the sort of like ordinary human world, but he's actually the long lost prince from another magical world. And the reason his parents haven't been able to bring him back home with them is because their portal to their world is only open for 9 days every 9 years, and they need to find him. So it's 9 years since they lost their baby, and now all these magical creatures are coming out of this portal on platform 13 to rescue this long lost prince. And it's just absolutely brilliant. There is a Dudley character. Our prince is obviously our Harry Potter character. There's magical portals on train platforms, and it's just so magical, and I loved it as a kid, so it's the one I decided to go for here. I had to pick one. Let's move on. Question number two is The Ghost of Christmas Present. Talk about a recent book that you think will become one of your all-time favourites. Again, this is difficult, and I've decided to go for a book that I've literally just reread. I first read it a year ago, but even the fact that I've reread it within the space of a year is a really good sign, and that is Radiance by Grace Draven. This is a fantasy romance, so no, it's not like literary fiction. It doesn't make grand political points, which I love, don't get me wrong, but what this book does, more so than any book I've read, whether it be literary, romance, any other genre, is portray an incredibly healthy relationship between two people. And I feel like either you read a lot of romance, which I do enjoy reading these days, that features quite an antagonistic relationship initially between the two love interests. Like there's a lot of misunderstandings or hate to love storylines, and equally, unfortunately, still a lot of representation of quite toxic behaviour in relationships. Or you read a lot of books about like failing relationships or unhealthy relationships that need to be explored. Sure, we need to talk about those as well, but what I find so rare is to see a genuinely healthy role model for a relationship in a book, and Radiance very much does that. I find this such a comforting, beautiful read. It is the love story between Brishin and Ildiko, who are an arranged marriage from different kingdoms, and they aren't interested in one another. They're different kinds of creatures, so Brishin is a Kai and Ildiko is a human, so they honestly find each other completely repugnant physically from the offset, but they also find that they have a lot in common intellectually wise. They really get on, they have excellent conversations, they respect one another's ideas, and they treat each other incredibly respectfully from the offset. And within this really wonderful kind of relationship that begins quite platonically despite being an arranged marriage, they fall in love with one another, and it's every step of it is just so perfect, and I can see myself rereading this book regularly in the future. Would love to hear recommendations of more kind of like healthy relationships and romances like that though, if you've got any. Question number three is The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, a book coming out next year that you're most excited about. I actually just uploaded my books that I'm anticipating the release of in 2020, so if you want like a whole list of I can't remember, maybe 13 books that I'm excited about, then I will link that video down below. But if I had to pick one, I think it would be The Alternative and How We Build It by Owen Jones. I think this book is particularly apt at this point in time. I think it's a book that a lot of us could benefit from reading in the new year when it comes out, and it's by one of my favourite authors and journalists. So Owen Jones has 2 full-length non-fiction books already out, both of which I adore, and this will be his 3rd work of non-fiction. Other than that, he's generally like a print and broadcast journalist. I really admire Owen Jones. I don't necessarily agree with every single thing he ever says in any piece of his journalism or opinion pieces, but overall I very much align with him in his values, and I think he's a very good researcher, a very considerate thinker, and he writes excellent non-fiction, and this book is all about what we can hope for as countries, as people, to improve people's lives and how we can go about fighting for that. And that's a fight that is certainly still very much on the table and that I want to be a part of in the new year. So I can't wait for that to come out and kind of read Owen Jones's perspective on it and be able to converse with other people about it. So yeah, that's my most anticipated release. Question number 4 is Bah Humbug, a book that everybody else loves but you do not. I want to kind of keep this video quite recent if I'm going to pick books, because there's loads of books I don't like that other people love. So I decided to go for something though that I read in 2019, so that we're talking about recent reads, and that is the 3rd book in the Crazy Rich Asians series, Rich People Problems. Now I really enjoyed book 1 in this series. Book 2 was okay, and book 3 I almost DNF'd multiple times. I really didn't like it. I just think it kind of deteriorated as a series. In saying that, if they bring out more films, I will keep watching them, because I think in a way some of the aspects of the book work better on film for me. And I did enjoy book 1. I thought book 1 was so much fun. But I think the title of the 3rd book very much sums up why I kind of stopped caring about these books. It is about rich people problems, but more often than not I feel like it's defending rich people problems. Like, yes, it takes the mickey out of the characters in the books, but there's also no good representation of working class characters or just non-rich characters. One of the protagonists isn't from a rich wealthy background, but she becomes a part of that and doesn't really offer a lot of questions up to the lifestyle of these crazy rich people. And I can't read books about that and enjoy it. I just find that exasperating when the world's such a mess. I don't need to read books about rich people problems, and some of you won't feel that way. And I just think the series lost a lot of its charm by book 3. It felt very messy. A lot of characters I didn't really care about, saying a lot of nonsense that I just thought was nonsense, and I kind of fell out of love with it. Would still recommend book 1 though to readers, and I think you can read book 1 as a standalone. I don't think you need to read books 2 or 3, and I think you can DNF them, unlike me, which I probably just should have done. Question 5 is Bob Cratchit, an old dependable that you always recommend, and I'm going to continue with the theme I feel like that's coming through in this video. Do you think there's politics lingering in the air? And that is Chavs by Owen Jones, because I do recommend this book to a lot of people, and I have managed to get some friends to read it. And it's actually a book that a lot of people recommended to me in my sort of close family friends group before I read it, and when I eventually did, I was like, wow, okay, why didn't I read this book sooner? It's amazing. Like I mentioned, this is another one of Owen Jones's non-fiction books, and this one specifically deals with the demonisation of the working class and the way that the working class are represented in different forms of media and the press, and both the news but also in entertainment, and the way in which they've been demonised. And I think it's a discussion we very much still need to have, because classism is still very much a thing. And coming from a working class background, I personally just don't feel like I see enough people talking about the subjects covered in Owen Jones's book, which I feel like he covers incredibly well. He writes a very accessible but informative book that I would, highly recommend everybody read. Question number 6 is Tiny Tim, an underhyped book that you think deserves more love. And again, I think I will go for a book I read in 2019 in this case, which is Here the World Entire by Anwen Hayward. So this is a Greek myth retelling, a retelling of the story of Medusa, which I am so grateful somebody wrote, because we need more retellings of Medusa's myth, because she is hard done by in both antiquity and in modern popular culture. She needs her story to be reclaimed, and I think this book does 2 things. It does an incredible job of exploring Medusa's story, but also exploring narratives of rape trauma. Because in Greek mythology, Medusa was raped, she was then punished for her rape by Athena and turned into a monster, and then Athena sent a man to kill her. I mean, why turn her into a monster if you're just going to kill her anyway? But She has an incredibly tragic story, and I think Anwen just does the most wonderful job of exploring that narrative, its relevance to modern day, with victim blaming, as well as just kind of giving Medusa this voice that she doesn't often get in like popular receptions of her story. And I know from having conversations with a lot of you that you enjoy Greek myth retellings, you're here for them as much as I am, and you're always looking for more recommendations, so this is one I would definitely recommend. It's not terribly long, but it packs a punch, and if you're interested, I have an interview with Anwen on my podcast, so I'll link it down below. Question number 7 is today, why? It's Christmas. What's a book that always gets you in the mood for Christmas, apart from A Christmas Carol? Oh, to be honest, guys, I don't like Christmas anymore. It's not my jam, and I don't really care. So nothing gets me in the mood for Christmas because I don't have a Christmas mood anymore. And therefore, I'm gonna move on. Question number 8 is The Muppets Christmas Carol, your favourite film adaptation of a book? I love this question. Right, there are some film adaptations I hate, there are some film adaptations I love, and I did not think of one ahead of this video, so just give me a moment. Sorry, I was just having a little look through my books and I've got it, because this one also would have worked so well for a kind of formative favourite children's book, and I did consider mentioning it, so I'm really pleased that I remembered it has a film adaptation, and an excellent one at that, because it means I can talk about it. And that's The Breadwinner by Deborah Ellis, which had a film adaptation come out a couple of years ago, and it's the most beautiful animated film, like gorgeous animation, and I think the animated style works so well with this book. This is a children's book, but that deals with very heavy topics, and therefore I think it's something we should all read and can still be appreciated by older audiences. I read it as a kid. I read it when I was around 9 or 10 when it first came out, and it made such an impact on me as a young person. It's about a young girl called Parwana who is a refugee from Afghanistan. So it deals with a lot of heavy topics, and I think the film was such a wonderful adaptation because, you know, it was so raw, it was so honest, it was so close to the original, which is also based on a true story, and it brought all that across, and it didn't dim any of the seriousness of the story, but equally the way it was animated, there were these bright scenes reminding us that Parwana was still a child, and these moments where she still, you know, experienced the joys of childhood, which I think actually makes the horrors that she experienced all the more horrific from a viewer's perspective, because it's like this child that went through so much, when really she should have just been out there playing with other children. And it's an amazing children's book and amazing film, so I would recommend both very much. But those are all the questions. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I feel like it's been a mishmash of books, which I hoped it would be. So do this tag if you haven't done it already, and let me know if you have, or do it. I'd love to watch your version and check out Lauren's channel while you're at it. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!